Hello, it's Monday, May 30th, 2022, Memorial Day. This is episode 12 of the Saluki Gamescast. My name is Justin Young, and joining me as usual are OJ Duncan and Alicia Utecht. Not here is Ryan Frills, falling down on the job, slacking off. He's not here.
How dare he travel for the weekend?
Yeah, how dare he?
They canceled the Waluigi movie now because Ryan's not here.
We've lost so much because of Ryan's absence. He doesn't even know. So, Alicia, you will have to cover all the anime talk for this episode. So, without Ryan here and everything. It's been 3 weeks. We were supposed to be gone for 2 weeks, and life got in the way. We've had all sorts of different things going on in people's lives. We've had people traveling back and forth out of town, and COVID scares, multiple COVID scares, I guess. And so we're really glad to finally be back, though we should probably go ahead and admit that over the summer we can't guarantee every other week, but we're going to try our best to be here on a semi-regular basis recording new content. So let's jump kind of right into it. Alicia, how's your life been since our last episode?
You know, part of me is tempted to say it's that time of the semester.
It's not, Alicia.
I'm in a summer class, so it kind of is. No, it's been really good. I am enjoying my summer class. It's not exhausting, which is a nice change of pace. It's been really nice to just kind of have a chance to breathe. You know, I'm only in the one summer class. I'm not teaching at the moment. I will be after the summer class is over, so I get to actually relax and just be a student again, which... What was that like?
It's only, juggling one ball. You're just tossing one ball straight up and catching it in one hand instead of having three or four all
exactly.
at once.
And it's nice because, it makes sure I get out of bed in the morning at a reasonable hour and I'm actually doing something with my day instead of just sitting on my phone, doom scrolling and reading fan fiction. And
I mean, there are worse things to do with your life than read fan fiction and doom scroll.
Worse things than reading fan fiction. I don't know about worse things than doom scrolling. That's pretty bad for my mental health.
All right, fair enough. OJ, how have you been?
Oh, I have been great. I had a week off scheduled that I didn't schedule anything. I made it 3 days through without actually doing anything or having to go to a meeting, which I think is a record for me. But then I was also getting kind of antsy and wanted to do stuff. So I don't think I meant to take an extended time period off. I always stay too busy for that. But yeah, I don't have any classes. I'm not teaching until July. So it's been kind of nice.
Great. That sounds fantastic. Sounds like it's been pretty relaxing. I actually went out of town on vacation, went down to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And that's always relaxing. One of my favorite places to go, get outside. And then there's also just like tons of fun stuff to do down there around the Gatlinburg Pigeon Forge area. But something related to video games is that while down there, I visited the Gatlinburg Pinball Museum.
Ooh.
So actually, before COVID, I guess about 3 years ago, I actually went down there and had no idea this thing existed and went to it, and it was super cool. My understanding was that maybe it shut down during COVID. Maybe it was closed for a while. I know I had recommended it to people who went down there. They said it was closed or it wasn't open when they were there particularly. And but it's open back up now, and they've actually expanded it. They've actually opened up the building and added a ton more games into there. So basically you go in, you pay a flat price. It's $20, but it's $20 for the entire day, and then all the games are open to play. So, or set to free play, I guess is the correct arcade terminology there. And they have just a wide variety of games, not just pinball, even though the name is the Pinball Museum, but they do have a lot of pinball machines, like tons of classic pinball machines, but also some of the newer machines like the Wizard of Oz and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. So those new ones that have the LED screens in the back that are playing movie clips and stuff. They had one of the Munsters that was playing, like, the intro to the Munsters and all that.
Did they have the Addams Family one? Because that one is actually my favorite.
You're talking about the classic Addams Family, the one from the 90s. Yes, which...
no, I'm talking about the original Addams Family.
Right. Well,
the pinball machine from the 90s.
Yeah,
I was like, no, not the movie. It's the show Addams Family.
Right. But the one from the 90s, the Addams Family machine is the best-selling pinball machine of all time.
Yeah.
So they do have one of those. But then they also have some really old, pinball machines, going back to some ones that are so they don't have flippers on them. Mm-hmm. So they predate kind of that era and everything. So that's really kind of interesting. They actually have a Computer Space arcade game. Computer Space is the first ever arcade video game. So they have one of those, and right next to it they have a Pong machine. So that's really cool to see in a place like that, because those are actually really historical pieces that a lot of people probably don't know. When they had the old setup, they actually would have little placards next to some of the games explaining a bit of the history. None of that's there anymore, which was kind of disappointing. But there's just so many more games that they do have there, including some very new ones. Like they have a Rock Band arcade setup in there. They have the new Star Wars game where you sit inside the little pod and it moves around and everything with you. So they have some pretty elaborate machines in there. One of the things that I was pretty excited about, they actually had a Willow arcade game cabinet from the movie Willow. And I was particularly interested in that because I had just been explaining to a friend who's a huge Willow fan that they made this game. And I was telling her about it, and she was like, well, have you played it? I was like, well, I've played it on emulators. I said, I've never seen it in an actual arcade. I'm like, I don't think this thing ever got wide release into arcades. So they actually did have one of those. And again, you pay that flat price. For the rest of the day, they give you a wristband, and you can come in and out and play as much as you want. It's really kind of a cool thing. If you're down in the Smoky Mountain area, definitely get out, go hiking, see nature. But you're going to have to spend some time indoors, and that's a really cool way to do it if you're into video games and into the history. And to me, like $20, that's if you spend 2 hours in there, you're making is a better value than going to like a Dave and Buster's where you blow through $20 very much more quickly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was something video game related. The other thing video game related I needed to talk about, I watched Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the new movie. And so OJ, have you seen this yet?
Yes.
Okay, so you've now seen, we've all seen the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 movie. All right, so for those who don't know, it's on Paramount Plus now, streaming. So if you just want to pay the whatever Paramount Plus is, $8 a month, you can watch it there. It's pretty good.
Isn't it? It's just such a cute, nice film.
I think it's a better film than the first one because it doesn't have any of the setup to do that the first one did. And so the fact that it just kind of jumps right into it. Jim Carrey is like, if they make a part 3, they have to bring Jim Carrey back.
He's just so delightful.
He's so invaluable to that movie. He's the only human who is invaluable to that movie from my perspective. And he's really good in the movie. He really just throws himself into that character. It is, for people who haven't seen these movies, this is the Jim Carrey of like the early 90s. The Mask and Pet Detective and all that. Like, this is Jim Carrey at his most cartoonish, over the top. He seems to really be enjoying himself in it. If I have one criticism of the film, I think it's too long. And I got to where I was kind of partway through it going, okay, like let's get this over with. And I think, so I know, Alicia, you had praised the sister character.
That was OJ and Ryan.
Okay, it was OJ and Ryan.
I kind of think that she was unnecessary, but
rude.
I think her name is Natasha Rothwell. Is that right? Is that the actress's name?
Good question.
Maybe not. I figured somebody would actually know beside me.
I only know the video game characters. I don't know the actual human characters, except for Chris Thorndike.
I'm just very bad with names.
Yeah, I was trying to look up real quick. Natasha Rothwell. That's her. She's really good in it, but that extended scene at her wedding, and so spoilers for anyone who's listening, but this isn't a big spoiler. This is just describing a scene in the film. That goes on for like 20 minutes, and it's very funny, but it feels like it's from a different movie.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And it feels like it's from a funny movie because she's really fantastic.
Oh, she's hilarious.
Yeah. But like the entire time I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait, what's happening? Where did the rest of the movie go? And there's like this love story subplot, and you're like, this is kind of endearing, but like also it's not in the beginning of the movie. It's not in the end of the movie. It just doesn't pay off at all. It's just like, we're going to take 20 minutes of the movie and give the humans something to do.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that could be cut out and the movie would be stronger, because I felt like when they focused on Sonic and those characters, I even felt like Dr. Robotnik's little lackey is kind of useless in this movie.
See, I really wish there was a character in the Sonic comics called Snively, who was Robotnik's nephew. And it drives me insane that they didn't use him instead of this random Agent Stone. Because if it would have been Snively, it would have been perfect. It would give them their replacement for if Jim Carrey does decide to retire. It would be, he's kind of like Starscream from Transformers, where he's following, but he's also a little weasel.
Trying to undermine him.
Trying to undermine him once in a while, trying to kind of go with it sometimes. It would have been perfect. And instead they made up a random character, which I like random characters, don't get me wrong, but it also would have been a nice way to like tie in some canon that isn't always brought in.
Right. I mean, I think the actor is fine in the role. Like, he does fine with what he's given. I mean, it's sort of like James Marsden in the lead role. Like, James Marsden is being the most James Marsden that James Marsden has ever been.
Right.
I feel like he is the most underappreciated actor in every movie that he's in. Like, when you watch like X-Men or Enchanted or any of the stuff that he's in, you're always like, he's fine. Yeah. But he's never given a whole lot to work with. And the same thing with this, I guess more so this one than the first one. So it really makes the humans seem superfluous. And, whenever the humans come on screen, you're like, I really want, like Tails and Sonic and Knuckles, and Idris Elba is fantastic as Knuckles. And the actress that I don't know her name.
Colleen, something that starts with an S.
But she does the voice of Tails, and she's done it for some of the games and some of the cartoons and everything. She's fantastic in that role. Like, everybody's doing great. We just don't need the humans. It would be a shorter, tighter movie without the humans. And, I think that's fine because, it's a pretty entertaining movie. And it's probably, if not the best video game movie, it is certainly in that topic of conversation. Like, it has to be up there with Mortal Kombat and Silent Hill as actually watchable video game movies. Yeah. Which, who would have ever thought Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would be such a conversation?
I'm just saying, we all thought it after Sonic the Hedgehog 1.
This is a better movie than Sonic the Hedgehog.
It is a better movie.
Absolutely.
And I think because they focus more on the Sonic characters and like sort of their lore and everything, that they move away from some of the goofy human stuff.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because... Justin, did you stay for the post-credits scene?
Yes.
Yeah. So, again, spoilers. The movie's been out for a while, so hopefully you've already seen it. But with the post-credit scene teasing Shadow and Gun, it'll be interesting to see, because I feel like these movies have a similar issue to like when the Transformers movies, the Michael Bay Transformers movies were coming out, and all the fans were like, we don't care about the humans, we just want the robots.
Right.
And then the argument was like, well, the average moviegoer doesn't know about the robots, doesn't care about the robots, they're interested in the humans. And I feel like Sonic has kind of faced that with the first one, where like they were like, we need to have the human characters to hook people and like get the people who don't necessarily care about the video game characters in. But it was nice to see in this one that they kind of, it felt like they recognized that and they were like, okay, like the humans are still there, but like you said, it does shift the focus more to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and it'll be interesting to see how they do that and if they continue doing that when they bring in Shadow, and I assume they'll bring in like Rouge and talk about the next one. We'll probably deal with the Sonic Adventure 2 storyline, so it'll be interesting to see how they progress.
I just want them to bring in Biggs the cat. I love Biggs the cat.
Oh, Big is such a gem.
So, yeah, I think that is an interesting, question about where do they go from here? Do they bring in Shadow? Is Shadow a stand-in for Robotnik if Jim Carrey does decide to leave? Because you can't replace Jim Carrey. Mm-hmm. So do you focus, on...
I mean, Shadow's not really a villain, though.
Well, but he, much like Knuckles, he presents as a villain originally, right?
Yeah.
And Sonic 2, when he's introduced.
In Sonic Adventure 2, he is on the... You have the hero storyline and the dark storyline, and he is villainous there, but I don't know that would serve as a long-term replacement for Eggman.
No, not a long-term. I mean, I think they would have to... At some point, right, they're going to run into the problem that like Marvel and Star Wars run into, where you redeem all your bad guys and you end up with only good guys at some point. And I feel like Marvel has, and Star Wars have both fallen into that trap. I mean, it's, Star Wars is often cited negatively for doing that with Darth Vader. They take one of the great film villains and by the end of the series turn him into a good guy. Yeah, and yes, I know. This is the one thing we will get emails about is people going, "No, it's part of a bigger story. You don't understand." Yeah, no, I understand. But for those of us who grew up with just the original films, he went from bad guy to good guy, and there was no prequel storyline. There was no Anakin or anything there. So that's all we knew of him. Yeah, so that's my non-directly video game related stuff to talk about. But I did want to talk about Sonic since I actually did sit down and watch that. And for those who are questioning whether it's worth your time, I think it's worth your time, especially if you have ever played the Sonic games and enjoyed any of them, which, God have mercy on your soul.
Hey!
Let's move over to news. Speaking of Marvel, a story was out that Marvel actually approached Xbox before Sony to make games for them. So this is going back to before Sony made Marvel's Spider-Man. So that first Spider-Man game on the PlayStation 4, they apparently approached Xbox and offered them the Marvel license, and Xbox turned them down. Said they weren't interested. And I think that's fairly surprising because I think most people had kind of assumed because Sony was doing the Spider-Man movies, that's how they got the license. But this is kind of, changing that storyline around a little. And
I just really want to know who at Xbox was like, Marvel, I don't think we'll turn a profit there.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it says something maybe about what Xbox's focus is on, that they're not focused on the license type of games and that they're focused on creating their own original property, where Sony is much more willing to go out and make that sort of licensed game. And, obviously that's paid off for them. That's been hugely successful. Marvel Spider-Man, huge hit. Miles Morales was a huge hit at the PlayStation 5 launch. They have Spider-Man 2 and the Wolverine game coming up now. But, that was not the direction that Microsoft and Xbox wanted to go. And the payoff has been that, we're seeing it now with Microsoft just not having a ton of games right now. Maybe they would had they went a different direction. Some positive news. Our Activision Blizzard news of the week.
Dun, 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 dun.
And this one's actually positive. So Raven's Q&A department, so Raven Software, who has worked on a variety of different things over the years, but their Q&A department was one of those that went out on strike and were demanding that they have an opportunity to form a union. They took a vote, and they voted to form the first video game union. So at least at a major publisher. So to my knowledge, at any of the major publishers, this is the first video game workers union. Microsoft has come out in response to this and said that if the Activision deal goes through, they will honor this union. And so this is pretty big news. The video game industry is starting to unionize. A few years ago, the video game sort of journalism and media coverage, several of those groups unionized. So to see this going on the game design and development side, I think is a very, very positive development. All right, Alicia, we've already talked a bit about this because as soon as I saw this headline, I think I was actually on vacation maybe when I saw this. I thought, oh my God, Alicia has to know this immediately. PlayStation is rumored to be in development of a Sly Cooper 5. Alicia, we'll just let you talk about Sly Cooper for the next 30 minutes.
Oh, don't tempt me. I will actually cry if this happens. Like the original trilogy of Sly Cooper games on the PlayStation 2 were some of, if not the only games that I 100%ed as a kid. Mm-hmm. Not my sister. We played them together, but I beat 100% on all three games. And you know what? The fourth game came out 2013. That's been 9 years. Mm-hmm. And it ended on a cliffhanger. We need Sly 5. I really, 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 really hope that this is true. If it's true, I will be going home for an extended period of time because my sister is the one who owns the PS5, and I will just be sitting in my parents' basement playing this game 200% it.
Or, your luggage will just be a little extra heavier after you go home next time. Your sister's frantically running around the house looking for the PlayStation 5. How did I misplace that? That thing's as big as a small refrigerator.
I think she might actually murder me.
That's such a beautiful family story. This is good news, I think. I mean, it's good. This is not a Spider-Man level game. It probably will never reach that level of sales. Those games have never been as successful as some of their more, prominent franchises. It's not God of War. It's not even Ratchet and Clank. And to see if this is true, if PlayStation is still developing in these, let's say AA franchises, these kind of smaller franchises that have a very loyal following, I think this is good news for people because it means that they're not only focusing on those, AAA franchises that we can invest $200 million in and make that back immediately. That's very good news from Sony's side if this is true. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't really like Sly Cooper, right? Especially for those who like Sly Cooper, obviously.
I've never played them, so I need to get the rest of them before this.
Yes, do it. Although I think I said this before, but make sure, because when they ported the original trilogy to the PS3, one of the boss battles in the first game is kind of a rhythm game, mm-hmm. and they screwed up the music and the rhythm with it, so it mm-hmm. got a little weird. I don't think they had that problem with the kind of rhythm-y stuff in the second game, mm-hmm. but I know that they had it with the Ms. Ruby boss fight in the first game. Okay. So be aware going in.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know if do you have a PlayStation 3?
Yes.
Okay, so I was going to say, if you don't have a PlayStation 3, it's going to be really hard to play those, even those remade versions. So it may be one of those situations where, the only way to really access those is to play them via emulation.
Yeah, well, I might have to do that because I think our disk drive on the PS3 is kind of not working very well anymore. But
well, speaking of Sony has some more news about movies and television. So here we go. They are making a Horizon series for Netflix. They are making a God of War series for Amazon. I believe we've already talked about that before on this show. And then the most bizarre one, they are making a Gran Turismo movie, and they want Neil Blomkamp to direct it. That's the director of District 9, the science fiction sort of alien movie. That's really weird, right? Like a Gran Turismo movie.
yeah,
I'm confused.
It's just for the name for that, honestly. Like, that's about all it, unless it's.
But I feel like
I don't know.
I feel like we already tried this with the Need for Speed movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one with Jesse from Breaking Bad, Aaron Paul?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. That did not translate into success. And despite the fact he was coming right off of doing Breaking Bad, he might have still been doing Breaking Bad actually at the time when that movie came out. And that movie completely bombed at the box office, or at least that's how I remember it. And, making a Gran Turismo movie, there's not a plot to Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the racing games, it maybe has the least plot to it.
Right.
It's pretty sterile. It's pretty just straightforward racing. So, yeah, OJ, I think you're 100% right. Like, this is completely like, hey, we have a name that we think has some value to it. Can we build a movie around this? I don't know. Any of those excite the two of you?
I mean, God of War, I'll be excited to see. I don't know. I've only watched the Horizon games being played, so I haven't played through them yet. So I guess it sounds interesting. That world seems very interesting, so they could do some really good stuff with it. But then I also, 3 times now I've tried to watch the Halo show, and I've fallen asleep in the first episode. So I'm hoping it doesn't go along the lines of that.
So you never got past the first episode?
No, and I'm not going to lie. I want to get through so I see Master Chief's butt. Really, that's what I want to see.
I bet you can probably just YouTube that scene and be fine.
Probably. That might be what's just going to have to happen.
I have not been watching, but I've been seeing headlines, and I guess they've been doing some interesting choices with that show.
Yeah.
You're alluding to the fact that Master Chief has sex.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got about 4 episodes into that show. I did see Master Chief's butt. That wasn't why I was there, but I did see it. And, it's how is the Sonic the Hedgehog movie better than Halo? And I think, like, OJ, you said it right. It's boring. Mm-hmm. Like, more than anything, it's just boring. And, people have kind of ragged on a lot of these event series, like the Marvel and Star Wars shows and all that. And the one thing I can say is that most of them have not been boring to me. Mm-hmm. And that Halo show is really boring.
Yeah.
The Sonic the Hedgehog movie was not boring. A little long, as I said, but like it's not a boring movie. Mm-hmm. They made Halo boring.
Yeah, and I'm not a person to fall asleep often while I'm watching something either. So 3 times there's something wrong with it. It's just not at all entertaining. You're right.
Yeah, that was a disappointment. So we'll see how these turn out and everything. I think God of War could be something really interesting, but it's also maybe something really expensive. That was something that I always felt like it was more of a movie than a show. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see where they go with that. We are at the end of May, and that means coming up in June, we're entering into what was traditionally E3 season. E3's dead, as far as we know. And so now it's the Summer Games Fest season, and they have put out a schedule as different groups have started announcing their events. So we were going to run down those real quick. June 2nd, there is a PlayStation State of Play announced. They have said this is going to mostly focus on third-party titles and the upcoming PlayStation VR 2. Rumored for the show, and that seem fairly safe bets, is that we'll get more of a look at Final Fantasy 16 as well as Street Fighter 6 as part of that. June 9th is the Summer Games Fest kickoff. Summer Games Fest is not a particular show. They have this kickoff show, but it's kind of their branding for encompassing all of these events, even the ones that they're not running. So it's a little confusing with that, particularly when Sony is getting out a week ahead of it and doing their own show. June 10th, Netflix is, as part of their Geeked Week, they're having on June 10th an event about gaming. We'll actually talk more about Netflix gaming here in a few minutes. Also, June 10th is the Tribeca Games Spotlight. So this is the Tribeca Film Festival in New York. They, over the last few years, have also been including games as part of that film festival and having a game festival as part of that. So they're going to have a spotlight. And then on June 12th, Xbox and Bethesda will be hosting their games showcase. Now, what's not on here are a couple of different things. One, next week on June 6th, I believe it is, Apple will be doing their Worldwide Developer Conference. That probably won't have anything to do with video games, but it could possibly. You never know with Apple. They're kind of a wild card. And then also Nintendo is very likely to have an event sometime around these dates. But Nintendo lately has been very much announcing their events the day before, 2 days before. So it seems likely they'll do the same thing with this. But looking at that schedule, are you excited for these events and learning about the next year or two of games?
I'm looking forward to the PlayStation State of Play. I've always been a PlayStation person. I never had an Xbox or any of that. I also, whenever Nintendo announces theirs, I'm looking forward to that because those have really been the systems that I've played throughout my life. So hoping, we're going to be talking a little later about some missed opportunities for nostalgia, but hoping for some nostalgia as well as new content.
Yeah.
What would you most like to see in that State of Play? Well, actually, I guess we'll get to that later.
I'll hold that for the big question at the end.
All right.
I'm definitely excited to see more info on the PlayStation VR too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, OJ, you already own the Oculus Quest 2.
Yes.
So, do you think you would buy a second VR headset, or what would it take to sell you on a second VR headset?
I'm pretty sure my husband is already sold on a PlayStation VR headset, so we're going to be getting it. I would want to see more game support. I mean, there's a definite good amount of games, but I'm getting a lot out of the Oculus, so I would need to have some really big names have some type of VR support.
Some exclusive things that you can't get on the Oculus.
Right.
All right. Star Wars Celebration was this last weekend, and as part of that, they formally announced the new Star. So this is weird. This series is called Star Wars Jedi. Everyone thought it was called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, but it's Star Wars Jedi : Fallen Order was the subtitle of the first game. And I think a lot of people were confused by that. I was confused by that.
I was, yes.
I think Star Wars Jedi as a title of a franchise is kind of weird because they're all about Jedi.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not Rogue One.
Yes. Okay. Fair. Rogue One. I don't think. Are there any Jedi who show up in
Nope.
Rogue One?
Not a single one.
I suppose Darth Vader shows up at the end, but he's
a
Sith by
Sith.
that point. And they do have the guy who has force powers, but they're like, no, he's not a Jedi. He's just force sensitive. It's like they want it to get by on a technicality there. But anyways, they announced this new game. It is called Star Wars Jedi Survivor. They released a trailer along with it. I have no idea what's going on in that trailer. There's a big reveal at the end of somebody in a tube of water, and I don't know who that is. No. And I kept seeing, like, I was on Twitter reading the responses, and people were going, "Who is this?" And I was like, "Great, nobody knows."
Didn't they also reveal they're doing a sequel to the Knights of the Old Republic, too?
They're doing a remake of the original.
Doing a remake. Okay.
Yeah, so that is a PlayStation 5 exclusive.
I was like, I knew I saw Knights of the Old Republic, but I didn't watch the trailers or anything. I just saw the title when I was doom scrolling.
Yeah, so they also announced that they're doing Knights of the Old Republic 2 for the Switch. So they are porting that. They had ported the first one over, now they're porting the second one over to Switch. But yeah, they're not doing, or at least I didn't see anything about a third one.
It might have also just been I saw the Knights of the Old Republic 2 being ported to Switch.
Right.
I just remember seeing the title.
Yeah, that remake, a lot of people are real excited about because those games, those are very good games, but they're games that I also think may be difficult to go back to today. Mm-hmm. And I haven't tried, but those were originally Xbox One games, and I don't know how well they hold up to go back and play them today. Because they felt like even at the time, those are BioWare developed games. Even at the time, they felt like, like punching above their weight class for what the Xbox could handle. And so this many years later, they feel really sort of antiquated compared to a lot of modern games. But this should be interesting seeing that remake. Sniper Elite 5 was pulled from the Epic Games Store. The developers put out a statement, said, we're working on this. This will be back soon. Nobody really knows what the story is here yet that I've heard, but it was kind of interesting because it did come out onto consoles. I actually have it downloaded on my Xbox at home. Been meaning to get around to playing it. And for it to get pulled from one of the major storefronts was kind of a weird development. Mm-hmm. So there's probably, it may be nothing. There may be more of an interesting story there eventually. TCL, a television maker who makes pretty good televisions. I actually have a TCL in my home. Says that the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S and X will get upgrades in 2023-24. They were kind of pitching this as part of a presentation on the company's future and everything. They were saying, hey, we think in 23-24 there will be a pro style upgrade to these consoles like there was last generation. The thing that's interesting about this and that people have pointed out is that TCL doesn't have any sort of inside knowledge of this, and if they did, both Sony and Microsoft would be calling them and threatening to sue them right now.
Yeah,
had they leaked this. So what this seemed, if you've seen headlines about this, this is probably more about TCL trying to justify to consumers why they need to buy a new TV to be ready for this next generation of consoles. So one of the problems that TV manufacturers are running into, right now you can go buy a TV that's 4K with the variable bit rate built into it. So they'll go up to 120 hertz refresh rate. Mm-hmm. You can go buy that TV right now. You can buy it from TCL. You can buy it from Sony. You can buy it from, a variety of other television manufacturers. Once we get past that, there's not a whole lot of gimmicks to get people to upgrade their TVs anymore. Mm-hmm. So the big one that the electronics manufacturers have been pushing over the last couple of years is 8K, but there's zero 8K content out there. Right? You can't get movies in 8K. You can't get Netflix in 8K. There aren't video games being made in 8K. It's just not something that people are going to need. And even if you could, at a 10-foot viewing distance, you have to have a television that's like over 75 inches to even see the 8K resolution, which most people do not have.
Yeah, that seems excessive.
So, this is a case of the television that you go out and buy this year is probably going to be good enough for the foreseeable future. There's no big new technology coming out that's going to make that TV out of date like there has been maybe in the last few years, as people were trying to catch up with this next generation of consoles. So anyways, don't listen to TCL.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of people who want a PS5 don't even have it yet. So, I wouldn't expect they would be able to get out a PS5 upgrade.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they are still selling out their entire inventory, both them and Microsoft, whenever they release any new inventory. So it does seem like a weird thing for them to say, well, let's upgrade it and take, they can keep selling these for a couple more years and, with the margins that are only going to get better on their end from the profits on these. We mentioned Netflix doing an event on June 10th about gaming. They've announced 4 new mobile games that they're putting out. These are called Dragon Up, Moonlighter, Townsman, A Kingdom Rebuilt, and as of tomorrow, the Exploding Kittens game. This is based off of the card game.
I feel like we need Ryan here to talk about this. He loves cats.
I think we mentioned.
How does he feel about exploding kittens?
I feel like we mentioned this on a previous episode, and Ryan got very disturbed. But yeah, I don't know. Do either of you subscribe to Netflix?
Yes.
Have you downloaded any of the mobile games?
No, I played Trivia Quest on Netflix, but I haven't downloaded. I don't know if they have mobile. I didn't even know they had mobile games until this moment.
Yeah.
So
I don't know that I can see myself actually going out and downloading these, except maybe Exploding Kittens, because I think that would be really funny.
Yeah.
But
it's a fun card game.
Yeah.
So these are free through your Netflix subscription, and you have to download the app to your phone, and then from within the app, I think you can download these games. I think it sends you back to the to the Apple or Android store to actually do the downloading. But
do I have to re-log into my Netflix account? Because I don't remember the password.
You mean you don't remember your parents' password?
You said it, not me. Don't tell Netflix they'll snipe me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you have to log in per game or how that works, actually, because I have also not downloaded any of their games. I don't think anyone cares. And I think this is a weird endeavor for Netflix to get into developing these mobile games that nobody really seems to care about. They're doing this instead of going out and developing, say, a big Stranger Things game. That seems like much more valuable for them to go to Ubisoft or EA and say, hey, develop us a AAA Stranger Things game.
Yeah.
This seems like a weird dalliance of theirs that's not going to go very far.
Exploding Kittens is the only one. Are these other ones, do they exist prior to this? Or is Exploding Kittens the only one that's based on something that already exists?
I don't know.
Because like you said, if they were to do a Stranger Things game or something where they're building on a property that already exists, that makes sense. Even Exploding Kittens. It's weird that Netflix is doing it, but it makes sense that someone would be like, hey, let's make a mobile version of Exploding Kittens. But these other things, I don't know if they exist beforehand or if they're just kind of what sounds fun?
They have done a couple of Stranger Things games that I'm aware of.
I know they have. I know they have Stranger Things Monopoly and stuff like that.
And there's a match game, Stranger Things, or a match 3 thing.
Okay.
But there's a couple that are sort of 16-bit styled adventure games and everything. But again, obviously never set the world on fire with those either, despite the popularity of that show. So,
they could release a new Nintendo America console.
There we go.
It's from the new season. It's not spoiling anything, but
Well, I mean, but like I think you're right, Alicia, that it doesn't seem to be playing off of the things that they are most successful at. So like, where is the Squid Game? You know, where's
Shadow and Bone? Where's Stranger Things? Where's Squid Game? Where's
Tiger King?
Tiger King, for crying out loud.
Where's the Circle Game?
Oh, I would play that all day, every day.
But like that seems like something they should be tapping into, right? Like here are the things that you have that are actual phenomenons, you know, because so much of what Netflix doesn't actually work or connect to the audience, it seems like. And the things that do, why aren't you capitalizing off those? Like,
Well, even if they did like a silly dating sim off all like their Christmas movies and stuff like that, like something goofy and lighthearted and fun that still built on their existing properties and made sense.
yeah, and like a Christmas Prince, adventure. What genre of game would the Christmas Prince video game be?
I'm thinking like the old, I can't remember what they're called now, but there were games where like you were a veterinarian and you would like take care of the horses and take care of the dogs and like kind of like the old Barbie horse games and stuff like that. That's the vibe I'm picturing for it.
In those movies, is the prince like a veterinarian?
No, but they ride horses in one scene. No, I think she's like I've only seen the first one. I think she's like a journalist. So you could be like going around whatever the country is called and doing journalism. I don't know.
It could be like the Genesis Spider-Man game where you got extra points if you took pictures of the bosses while you were fighting them.
There you go.
Peter Parker's a photojournalist, so you know she's like dodging falling boulders and everything as she runs through the countryside and she's taking pictures. That's silly enough of a game I would play it. Nintendo Switch Online has added a few new games: Pinball for the NES, Rival Turf for the Super Nintendo, and Congo's Caper for the Super Nintendo. I will be honest, I have never heard of Congo's Caper prior to now. Rival Turf and Pinball I was familiar with.
Well, obviously, you just went to the Pinball Museum.
Yes. Rival Turf is a sort of Final Fight knockoff, sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up game. It's pretty decent for what it is. Congo's Caper is you playing as a caveman. So, you know, looks interesting, but I played Joe and Mac, and that was enough caveman video games for me. This is kind of an interesting story. NBC Universal considered merging, not buying, merging with Electronic Arts. And the story was that Electronic Arts would have been in charge, that their CEO would have become the CEO of this new merged company together, which gives me really America Online, Warner Brothers, 90s vibes.
Right.
When those two companies merged together. And it was, you know, America Online's now in charge and running Warner Brothers, and that was a disaster. And much like when Warner Brothers merged with AT&T, and that was a disaster.
Right.
But that's kind of what it reminds me of and everything. But also interesting from the story is that deal came fairly close, but EA was also in discussions with Disney, Apple, and Amazon. So all of this apparently stems from the acquisition of Activision by Microsoft, and apparently EA just started talking to everyone. And you know, there's an old axiom in the game industry that everyone's always talking to everyone, and so these sorts of things are going on. These sort of discussions are going on quite often, but this one seemed to get pretty far along and came fairly close to potentially happening.
I don't trust EA to run anything, if we're being honest. I think NBC Universal would be bigger than EA, honestly.
Yeah, that's the really surprising part to me is like EA would be in charge? Right. What? Why? I'm confused.
I think the thing that gets me from this is NBC Universal was owned. I don't know if I believe they're still owned by Comcast in part. So
yeah, they are, because every time you watch a movie and it has because CinemaSins points it out every time. Comcast.
So Comcast is the most disliked company in the United States, and they got there by overtaking Electronic Arts to become the most disliked company. So it'd be the two most disliked companies in the United States merging together.
Irony.
And that's on the Comcast side. I don't think people really dislike NBC Universal particularly. Obviously, the theme parks and everything are much beloved. But you also have to kind of wonder, like, what do they get out of merging with Electronic Arts? Because Electronic Arts they're not Nintendo.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not bringing in all those characters, all those properties that you can turn into movies and theme park rides. What are you going to make, a John Madden ride at Universal Studios?
Right.
You're going to get in like your bus and just go around in circles around a map of the United States or something? Like, what would that? I mean, what of their properties would translate into, TV shows or movies or rides or anything of that nature?
They can make a ride, and then you would have to pay extra to have an actual vehicle to be in the ride in as like a DLC.
It's the Madden Ultimate Team ride.
Oh my gosh.
Like, the ride only goes for like 10 seconds, and it's really slow unless you like pay extra money to upgrade it.
You have to, if you pay extra up front, then it's like 50 cents cheaper versus if you pay after the 10 seconds.
DLC excitement. Yeah, this seems like a really weird deal for everyone involved, and this is also kind of a weird deal. Thinking about these giant media companies buying up video game development houses is also kind of weird, because most of the big media companies have gone out of video game development. Disney was very much involved in video game development. They got out. So the idea that they would buy Electronic Arts seems really weird, because that just gets them back into the same mess they were in a few years ago. And they seem to have been very unhappy with how Electronic Arts was handling the Star Wars properties. And so, they've gone out and made deals with other companies now.
Can you imagine if Electronic Arts took over Disney? Like, remember when Disney bought Marvel and we all flipped out? Like, imagine now if EA bought Disney.
Right. Can anybody buy Disney, actually? I don't think there's anything that's bigger than Disney that could buy them.
I have no idea. I would think not, but I would also think EA couldn't take over NBC Universal.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, I think Apple is actually bigger than Disney. I think Apple could buy Disney, but in fact, that's been rumored in the past. Like, oh, well, maybe they'll buy them, Then all of a sudden, Apple TV, then you'll subscribe to Apple TV.
Will I? Maybe if they put it in a combo with Disney Plus.
It's going to replace Disney Plus, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's the point. But yeah, so anyways, kind of a weird story out of there. Let's see, a couple other stories here. The Callisto Protocol, which is the follow-up to the Dead Space games, the spiritual sort of sequel to the Dead Space games, is no longer part of the PUBG universe. PlayerUnknown Battleground. This was always a weird story. PlayerUnknown Battleground is a battle royale game, obviously the one that first popularized the genre. And they were going to make this futuristic space horror game, and it was going to be set in the same universe for some reason. That never made a whole lot of sense. So
we are confused.
The fact that this isn't happening is not at all a surprise. It made the least surprising news. Destroy All Humans Clone Carnage was leaked by the Xbox Store. This is a standalone multiplayer game. This is unlike the other two Destroy All Human games that have been remasters of past games. This would apparently be something new they were putting out. Lord of the Rings Gollum is releasing on September 1st. So, Alicia, Again, I know that this is of particular interest to you. How excited are you for this Gollum game?
I just, why? I am confused. I watched the trailer and I watched like the team talking about it and all that. And on the one hand, it does look cool. And don't get me wrong, I'm going to buy it because it does look like the designs and the visuals of the game look gorgeous, aside from I think Gollum's eyes are too big, but that's a nitpick. But just why Gollum? We have been asking for years for Aragorn. Give us his whole story. That to me would have made so much more sense than Gollum. Like I'm so confused. I'm gonna buy it, but I'm confused.
Yeah, the trailers have really pitched this as a sort of sneaking around stealth-based game, which makes sense with Gollum. That's sort of in his character and everything.
Yeah,
but I wonder in this situation if this was we built this game first, and then we put the property on top of it.
Yeah, that way of getting to it makes a lot more sense to me because I'm like, I can't fathom looking at Lord of the Rings, the greatest work of fiction ever, and saying, you know what character needs a video game? Gollum.
But the flip side of that is there a character to the general public more recognizable than Gollum?
I would say Legolas, probably. Everybody loves Orlando Bloom.
I think that was maybe true when those films originally came out, but today, do you think he's still more recognizable? Because Orlando Bloom's like star has faded quite a bit, I feel like. Granted, early 2000s, Orlando Bloom, there was no one bigger in the world. He was like, cool and the heartthrob, so I get it. But like today, do you think he's still as popular or still as well known?
I mean, I will say I'm part of like the Lord of the Rings fandom, so I see a lot more around all of the characters, so it's hard for me to say who the general public who isn't in the fandoms knows as well.
Right.
So as someone who's not a huge fan, the only thing I could quote you from the entire franchise is My Precious.
That makes me really sad.
Well, and I think that's my kind of perspective on it is I wonder if he's just the most marketable character because he's the most recognizable character to the general public. In the same way that if you're making a new Star Wars game about the sequel trilogy, do you make that a BB-8 game because nobody remembers any of the other characters at this point?
I might be too invested in fandoms to be able to take that perspective because I 100% remember every character.
Well, I will say I won't say I remember every character because there are some of those weird characters who like show up for a scene and you're like, wait, who are you? Why are you in this film? What's her name? Felicity. What's the actress's name from the TV show Felicity?
I never watched it.
But she's in the third film, The Rise of Skywalker, and she plays like the character who shows up, and she's like friends with who she's friends with. Like
she's the one who's friends with Finn.
Yeah, and she's like in it for like a scene, and they make her like she's important, and then she just disappears.
Oh, yeah.
So do you think a Mandalorian or a Baby Yoda game would do better?
I mean, definitely Baby Yoda, but Baby Yoda's cute. Gollum's not cute.
But if you make a Mandalorian game, which is the easier game probably to make, Gollum, Baby Yoda comes along with that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little easier, but like Gollum doesn't necessarily come along with any of the other characters.
Yeah, and I do get what like they talked about, he is a character who has interacted with all the major players. And so like I don't know. I think for me, this kind of comes back to just like, I guess I could see this more as like a follow-up game. It's not the first character I would have chosen.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first character I would have chosen would have been Aragorn. Or possibly, give us Gandalf, give us something more with the wizards. I think for me, this feels more like it should be a follow-up game to, hey, we've started doing this series of Lord of the Rings games focused on individual characters. And maybe they're using this to jumpstart some of that and give us those other games that we've been asking for so long. Like I said, I'm far more excited for this than I am for the Amazon Lord of the Rings show. And I'm definitely, like I said, I'm still going to buy it. I still think that the visuals look gorgeous. I'm just also confused.
Right. I think Aragorn makes more sense from a traditional video game because it's just a hack and slash game then, right? Like
you could get hack and slash. You could get more of like the in-depth missions. You could dive into... We don't get to see a lot of him working with the Rangers in the books or the movies, and so like you could dive into that, and that could potentially incorporate some of the sneak elements that they are going to have in this Gollum game. It feels like I'm ripping on this game before it's out, and I don't mean to do that at all. Like I said, I am excited for it. I do want to play it. I'm just also confused.
I think we understand why. Like it is a puzzling decision that you can pull from these more. Even though I made the argument about Gollum may be more recognizable, if you're making a new video game, do you get the guy who carries a sword? Do you get the guy who carries the bow? Do you get the guy who has the magic staff? Or do you get the little tiny guy who like sneaks around in the shadows? And traditionally, you'd make any of those other three games first, right? Because there's already templates for making those games. This game, like I don't know what this game will turn out to be. Is it going to be, essentially, a traditional stealth game, but like, sort of mixed in with a little bit of action? Like, I still don't guess I know entirely, even having watched some of the trailers, exactly what this game is.
Yeah.
And so I think those other characters are easier to translate directly into a game. So last thing here in the news, we've kind of saved the best or the worst for last. PlayStation Plus Classics have begun. So these are the new tiers of PlayStation Plus. So remember, they're now splitting PlayStation Plus into 3 tiers. The very lowest tier is going to be what you're already paying for PlayStation Plus. The next tier is going to be sort of a combination of PlayStation Plus with PlayStation Now. And then the third tier is going to add in some classic games into that mix as well. So there's a couple of things to kind of talk about with this. But first off, they've released what some of these classic games are going to be. They also released a list of what the PlayStation 4 and 5 collection will be as part of that. Those are less interesting. Those are sort of the games that, for the most part, I think you would expect and everything. I think the classics are what are more interesting because, when we think about the PlayStation at this point, they have 4 generations of so-called classics to pull from. So, plus 2 portable systems. There's a lot of PlayStation history to pull these games from. And both of you have a list of these in front of you. People have been extremely underwhelmed with this list so far.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder what your reactions to this list are.
So here's my thing. There's not a lot of games, and the games that are here, so the PlayStation 3 games that streaming that they've announced are already streaming. So I don't know if they're doing something different with those or not, but I've already played through Infamous 2, and Infamous Festival of Blood streaming months ago on the already existing streaming. So that's not anything new that they're announcing. Now, if they're going to announce that you can get all of the DLC for all of these titles on streaming, that would be great. but all of the DLC isn't available on these titles when you're streaming. So the PlayStation 3 ones, there's not really anything that I haven't already played in there. The PlayStation 1 titles, there's a couple that I'm probably going to play, but it's nothing that's like earth-shattering, nothing like, oh, I am so glad I'm going to get to play these now. It's like, oh, Hot Shots Golf, I'll probably play that for a little bit and then get bored with it because like there's nothing new or good with that, right?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's kind of weird about Hot Shots Golf is they have the original for the PlayStation 1 on this list, but then they also have 2 of the games on the PlayStation 3, and I believe they also have one of the ones on the PlayStation 4. I think Everyone's Golf, the retitled name for it. So, you know, that's great, but like, are you going to go back and play the original Hot Shots Golf, or are you going to play one of these newer versions? And I think most people are going to play one of these newer versions.
Yeah, it's a very odd list to me. Once again, I am confused. You know, and like looking at this, I see some familiar names to me. Like they have a couple of the Worms games for the original PlayStation that they're putting out there. That's kind of fun. Got a little bit of Jak and Daxter. Like this is missing a lot of the games that would have gotten me to get on board with this.
If I didn't already have it, this wouldn't be anything that would make me get it.
Yeah. And like even looking ahead to like some of the PS3 ones that they have on streaming, like they have Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, but they don't have any other Castlevania games on here.
Well, Harmony of Dissonance is already streaming on there, but no DLC, so like half of the game is gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you would think that they would put like just older games from that series, and that they would do. I mean, I know we talked before we started recording, like I would have loved to see the original Sly Cooper games on here, because as we've talked about before, like the PS3 ports kind of messed up some things with the music, and especially important when you're playing the rhythm boss in the first game. And so like if they would have been able to put like the PS2 version on this, that would have been really cool. And it's just a very lacking list.
Yeah, let me read through this real quick, because this is how short the list is. We can read through all these original PlayStation PS1 games. They have Ape Escape, Hot Shots Golf, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Siphon Filter, Mr. Driller, Tekken 2, Worms World Party, and Worms Armageddon. And that's it. That's the entire list so far. Now, they are saying they are going to build on this list. There are going to be more games eventually. But when you look at that original PlayStation lineup there, this doesn't even come close to the PlayStation Mini that they put out, the PlayStation Classic, you know, the selection of games off of that. And I'm looking at this, and as somebody who owned an original PlayStation, you know, I think about what games do I think of with the original PlayStation, right? And I think of Ridge Racer as a seminal game for that system. Final Fantasy VII, Suikoden, Metal Gear Solid, you know, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, arguably, you know, one of the best games ever made, speaking of needing more Castlevania. And I understand those games are hard to get because Konami and other companies want to sell those games in separate packages. But, you know, we're already getting the Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you gave the original away as part of this, that's not going to stop anybody from buying the remake. That's such a different game.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the sort of game that would get people, like, you know, that's a game I associate with the PlayStation. So if you're telling me here's the classic PlayStation lineup, Final Fantasy VII is part of that. You know, a Ridge Racer game is part of that. You know,
or even I could see them holding on to 7 for when the Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis stuff comes out on mobile, but put out Final Fantasy 8, put out Final Fantasy 9. Like those were also
They're already there.
massive. Yeah.
Parasite Eve, like anything, there's lots of options there that they could have gone for. And this lineup just seems so anemic at this point. I would have, some of this comes down to licensing issues. You're not going to get the Tony Hawk games, which are classic PlayStation games. You're not going to get SSX on the PlayStation 2 because of the licensing issues with that. But still, those are games these games that aren't as big of a licensing issue, right? Because they're not using licensed music or something. They should be on here.
Yeah.
And it makes it really hard for me to see who is this service for. At least the classic games, right? Like the PlayStation 4 and 5 games, that's a different story. That's a better lineup. But these classic games, I don't see this convincing anybody to upgrade to play these games.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, so I'm looking through a list of the PS Now games that are already available to stream, and most of these aren't even new. Like Lords of Shadow 2 was already streaming, along with 1. And Mirror of Fate and Harmony of Despair. So those games are already streaming. I don't know why they're listing them here unless they're going to reduce the amount of things that are available.
Well, I mean, it seems weird that they wouldn't be listed here, right? If they were carrying those over,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you include those? Because that would make this much more of a value to people.
Yeah, Crash Commando was already available. Yeah, all of these games were already available, so I don't know why they're listing them out separately.
Unless not everything is coming over from PlayStation Now.
I'm going to be very upset because there's a couple of games that I'm in the middle of that I'm streaming. And so if those don't come along, I'm going to be very angry.
Well, in other bad news for these classics, this is sort of a technical thing, so we'll try to explain it, but not get too technical with it. A lot of these classic PlayStation 1 games, the version that they are putting on here so far has been the PAL version, not the NTSC version. So both Japan and the US used NTSC signals. Europe used PAL signal. Actually, most of the world used a PAL signal. That's PAL. Without getting too technical, basically it has something to do with the electrical current and signal and everything. So basically televisions in Europe used to run at a 50 hertz refresh rate versus in the US they ran at a 60 hertz, and in Japan. That carried over to game consoles. So games were mostly developed in Japan. So they're developed for an NTSC signal to run at 60 hertz. That means that essentially every second the image is getting updated 60 times a second. Not necessarily running at 60 frames a second, but getting updated 60 times. So a PAL signal only gets updated 50 times a second. So when they would port games from Japan to Europe, they would actually have to slow those games down by a 6. The games would actually run at a 6 of the speed, which would affect the game, how it played, would affect also the music, and unless they went in and took the time to actually change that around, which most people did not. So generally speaking, the PAL versions of these games were the inferior versions compared to the NTSC versions. That's what they're putting on here. And there's no reason for that because today everything runs through digital, and so there is no difference between Europe and Japan and the US or anywhere else really in the world. So there's no reason not to put the best quality versions of these games on there.
Right.
Literally none.
The only justification I've read from anyone is some people have speculated that because the PAL version were the European versions, they would often have more languages in them by default. So you would get, German and English and French and, et cetera. And that could possibly be the reason. Nintendo gets around this by just putting both the PAL and the NTSC versions on their service. So you can play whichever one you want.
Yeah.
So this is really bizarre that Sony, they did the same thing, by the way, when they put out the PlayStation Classic, their little mini console. They also put the PAL versions on there. And so this has already been a problem for them once before, and they're making the same problem again. And it doesn't seem to be any logical reason why they would do this.
You would think if they've already done this before that they would come out and say, like, hey, here's why we're doing it again. Because they had to have seen that people were frustrated when they did it before.
The fact that they're not addressing it is really bizarre. Because I think you're absolutely right. They should have saw this coming as a problem. And the fact that they're not getting out there and addressing it means, that they didn't think up some reasoning, some excuse, some explanation for the audience.
Yeah. Like the more languages things does actually make sense. But if it's not Sony saying it, then it's just us guessing at why they did it. Like, why would, if that's the reason, then Sony, tell us that's the reason.
Yeah. It's a bizarre, this is a bizarre story. Everything about this rollout of this enhanced PlayStation Plus service is bizarre. And, I want them to be successful. It's good if they have a good quality competing service against Game Pass, but this is not it. Not the way that they're selling it right now. All right. That does it for news. Let's get into happier things. Alicia, what have you been playing?
So, I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, since it's been 3 weeks since we recorded. But a couple weeks ago was my boyfriend's birthday, and for his birthday, his family gave him Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. And his Switch lives at my apartment. So I have been playing...
his family gave you.
Yeah. Pretty much. I have been playing a lot of Brilliant Diamond. It is definitely... I hesitate to call it a remake because I think it definitely missed out on bringing in some of the aspects from... when these games were originally released, it was Diamond and Pearl, and then Platinum was the third one for the fourth generation. And every time they do a third one, they update some things. Maybe they introduce some new characters, stuff like that. And Platinum made some really good updates to Diamond and Pearl. And this game does not incorporate any of them. It is a straight remake of Diamond in this case, since I'm playing Brilliant Diamond, which is very charming. I never actually played Platinum. I've just watched it on YouTube. And so for me, it's very nostalgic to have just completely, I know what's coming, I know what's happening, but also it's been so long since I've played Diamond and I've watched Platinum a lot more recently. So I'm like, wait, that was changed? I don't remember this. But I am really enjoying it. It's definitely more of a remaster than a remake, I would say. But it's very charming. The chibi art style is a little off-putting at some points, just because Team Galactic is one of the scarier teams out there as far as Pokemon villains go. And so, yeah, when you have Chibi Cyrus staring at you, telling you that he's going to destroy the world, and your character is just sitting there with their little smile and their big eyes, and it's like, okay, this is a little out of place. But I'm enjoying it. I think it's cute. It's a nice little nostalgia trip for me.
So more Pokemon.
I know. Surprise, surprise.
I feel like that meme that you shared on social media of, all the Squirtles and everything, and you said, I'm going to start another project. And
yes, I shared a meme on Facebook of, if you've seen the original Pokemon anime, then you know that Ash's Squirtle was the leader of the Squirtle Squad, aka a gang, because the original Pokemon anime went hardcore. And there's a shot of when he reunites with the Squirtle Squad, and he's got his arms open, and they're all dressed the same, and they all got their arms open, and on him it's like, new research project idea, and every one of them is like, research idea, research idea, research idea, research idea. And Justin lovingly commented and was like, this is also you with Pokemon games. Which, valid.
I do feel like, just to be fair, you are currently playing at least 3 Pokemon games that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm. Am I?
Yeah.
Brilliant Diamond, Legends Arceus.
Were you playing I guess you just finished the one from last year, whatever the newest Pokemon game is.
Legends Arceus.
No, Sword.
Oh, Sword. That's right, I was playing Sword.
So maybe they didn't all 3 overlap at the same time, but
Yeah.
very, very close.
Yeah. I enjoy nostalgia, especially with how crazy this school year has been. It was really nice to just kind of sit down and have familiar games. Not completely known, except for in the case of Brilliant Diamond, which is, again, more of a remaster than a remake. But just kind of having that, it's like turning on your favorite Disney movie. You know, you just get that comfort. It's like, okay, this is my happy time.
No, and I think that says something about the Pokemon franchise, because they are moving to this, like, we're going to have 2 games a year basically coming out. And, you know, is that oversaturation? Can the Pokemon fandom support that? And the fact, I think you're a fantastic example. Yes, they can. They can handle 3 Pokemon games at the same time, even.
I do wish they'd bring the cost down a little bit, as long as I can keep getting them given to me.
Right. Well, that's a whole other issue.
Because really, the only one of these games that I paid for was Legends Arceus. Because Sword came with the Switch when my boyfriend brought it over to my apartment, and Brilliant Diamond was a gift from his parents. So, thanks, Terry. I love you.
This is why you date rich people, so they can bring you lots of games.
That's the secret. The secret's out. I'm just a gold digger for video
Pokemon
game content.
games. That is the saddest, like, go digging I've ever heard of. I'm dating you just for your Pokemon.
I'm sure it's not the only time that's ever happened.
Anything else you've been playing, Alicia?
That's been the big one for me. I've been watching a few things. I recently finished The Runaway Guys, which is a channel on YouTube that is 3 gamers, Proton John, Nintendo Capri Sun, and Chugga Conroy, where they play games together. So I just finished watching their playthrough of Secret of Mana, which was really fun because it actually is a 3-player game, and Nintendo Capri Sun, or Tim, is like, that's his game. That, like, me at Pokemon, that's Tim at Secret of Mana. So it was really fun to watch. Normally he's kind of more introverted than the other 2, so it was nice to see him get to take the lead on one. But that's been, I think, the big thing that I've been watching has been that, and just kind of going back and watching some old Sonic games, because the movie made me nostalgic for that too.
All right. OJ, what have you been up to?
So I've been playing a lot, actually. I've been spending a lot of time getting to games that I've been wanting to play or replay and haven't. So I played through Metroid, like the original.
Did you get Bikini Samus?
Yes. I spent so much time on all of the other games doing it. I had to do it on the first one. I did it before on that one. I'm playing Earthbound Beginnings. I've been going back and forth between it. It's really interesting, too, because I've only ever played the fan translation of Mother 1. So seeing the translation that Nintendo's putting out for Earthbound Beginnings was really, really interesting. Seeing how they've changed some stuff.
Do you think
from it
for the better or the worse compared to the fan translation?
Now it's for the better, because the fan translation had some iffy spots that I didn't understand what was happening. I've been understanding what's happening. Well, I mean, as much as you can understand something in an Earthbound game, right?
Fair enough.
I was playing. I started playing through the Infamous games at the end of last semester, and then stopped. So I'm finishing up my 100% evil run of Infamous 2, and then I'm going to move on to Festival of Blood and then Infamous Second Son. I've been playing through some of the Pixel remasters. And
can I jump in here real quick? Have you played the Infamous games before?
Yeah, they're one of my favorite franchises.
Yeah, I love Infamous 2. That's such a fantastic game.
It really is.
And Second Son's fine. It's not a bad game, but it doesn't hit the highs that Infamous 2 does.
Yeah, 100%. And I really wish they'd make another Cole game.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. I don't think they have any plans of ever bringing the franchise back, but if they did, I would want it to go back to Cole.
Yeah, and I think maybe they learned that after Second Son, that Cole was the better protagonist.
By leaps and bounds. Which, I mean, he wasn't bad. Like, I can't even remember his name in Second Son right now, but he's not bad, but Cole was just so much better.
The story set up around him, I think, was more interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And
you said the Pixel remasters.
Yeah. So got through 2, which this is the first time I played a 2 that wasn't a fan translation, because I always played the original 2 with like fan translation. So I never played any of the like remakes where that had 1 and 2 together. And so that's interesting. I'm about to move into 3 with that. I'm planning to get through them all this summer, but I've been moving kind of slow through them, so we'll see. I might have to skip 12. But
isn't that the one you forgot about?
Yeah. But no, I'm gonna make sure I play through that one. But I've been thinking more about Strangers of Paradise, and I think if they made that an open world game rather than having to select levels, I would like it a lot better. So I just been thinking about the game. I haven't been playing about it, but it's like it's living in my head, unfortunately, just because I want them to make it better. They'll never make it an open world game.
I feel like that game is going to haunt you the rest of your days.
It really, honestly is. That's going to be my last thought on this earth. Is like,
chaos.
Yeah.
You're gonna be on your deathbed, and like your family's gonna be there, like leaning in to hear your last words, and you're just gonna be like,
chaos. This is your Rosebud moment. They're all going to go, what does it mean?
That's a movie I'd watch.
Citizen Sid.
Yeah.
Oh, no. No, that's dark.
So, also, let's see. I was streaming a game. Actually, I downloaded it. Called Technomancer, which I haven't gotten very far through it, but it seems really interesting so far, what I played. But it's very, very difficult. I wasn't expecting it to be as difficult as it was. And I've been playing a lot of like idle games on my phone, and I started playing a new game too called, let's see, Dislyte. Dislyte. And it's kind of like a card collect game. Where you have to do like the gacha for espers, which are the characters that you play that you run through. It's set in like a urban dystopia type thing, and the espers, which is what you call the characters, are humans who got special powers when miracles started happening, and all of them are it's like human characters, but they're all based upon some type of like god or other like mythological creature. It's really interesting, and I haven't had to spend money on it yet, which means that I probably will spend money on it. Because like if I need to spend money on a game, I like a mobile game, I probably won't. But if I haven't had to yet, because I'm getting enough to like get characters and level up and stuff, so it's really good.
And this is an idle game?
No, this one's not an idle game.
Okay.
I've been playing idle games, plus I started playing this one because I saw it in an ad, and it's really fun. I liked it a lot.
So, what sort of game is it then?
So you have to get all of these characters. You level them up, you build them up. They have equipment and stuff. You go through levels and you're playing through them, and it's kind of like in JRPG when you're playing through the battles.
Okay.
And each of the characters get 3 separate moves, and one of them's like a super powerful one. Some of the characters are much, much better than the other ones. There's like double S characters and there's some F characters in there. But through just getting because gold records are what you use to like do the like gotcha type thing. And getting 10 of them in order to get 10, like do a 10 run is not hard in the game at all. So I got plenty of characters. The first roll that you do, you get like a 4-star character or a 5-star character. And I got a really good one. And
so it's sort of a gotcha game. Okay.
Yeah. But again, I haven't had to spend money on it. Like if I look at like, what is it? Final Fantasy. I can't remember what it is. The one where it brings all of them together, the mobile game.
Dissidia? No, that wasn't mobile.
I can't remember what it's called.
I know what game you're talking about, but I can't remember the title.
Well, that one, once I'm sure someone who's listening would know what it is, but like I had to spend money on that one. There were specific roles that I needed because I needed to get certain equipment. This one, it hasn't had anything like that. It's like I can spend money, which means again, if I'm not required to, I'm more likely to spend money than if I'm required to. I'm like, I'm not going to play this game.
Right. Yeah, I think I find myself the same way often. Like if this game is requiring me, almost immediately out of the gates to spend money to even progress at all, like I completely lose interest. I think my assumption is this game is just going to milk me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Versus, I can put $5 or $10 into this and get some extra enjoyment. But it's not actually trying to milk me.
And there's no ads or anything to it. I really like how they have it built as well.
Cool. And what was the name of that again?
Dislyte, Dislyte.
All right, cool. Anything else?
That's all I can think of video game wise. We have a board game group that we were, me, Ryan, and Janine were playing some board games, and we played, what was it called? I can't remember it. Horrified. Which is like a board game that has all like the classic movie monsters, and it's pretty fun.
That sounds cool. All right. I've played a couple of things. One is Loot River. So Loot River is sort of an overhead action game, sort of in the traditional Zelda style, I guess you would say, except you are always on water, and you step onto these platforms, and then you use the right stick to move the platform. And you can move the platform around in the water, and the platforms themselves are sort of Tetris pieces. That's what they often look like in the shape of them. So they're usually, constructed of very clearly cut squares in different shapes and everything. Sometimes they're more complicated than Tetris pieces, but a lot of them look like Tetris pieces. And so you're going through dungeons and everything's on water, and you're trying to move around, and you're having to move around these different platforms, and very quickly they become sort of puzzles. So how do I get this oddly shaped piece through all these other oddly shaped pieces over to the next area so I can progress in this game and everything. And it's run-based, so it's sort of a roguelite and everything. You do have this sort of camp that you keep going back to, your home base. It's an interesting game. I played a little bit of it, and I kind of fell off of it, and I don't know that I'll go back to it. I think you have to really be into the game, and I was really into it at the very beginning, and then it quickly started wearing on me. I think as some of the puzzles got more difficult, I was like, I don't know, this is suddenly becoming a sliding blocks puzzle, and I don't know if I'm that interested in the gameplay to make me push my way through solving these puzzles. But it's an interesting game, and it's on Xbox Game Pass. So if you do have that, it's free. So it's worth checking out and everything. I think there's an audience that will connect with that game more than I have. I will probably go back to it at some point, but it didn't excite me as much as I wanted it to. The second game is Pac-Man Museum Plus. So this is their new Pac-Man collection of games. This is most of the Pac-Man games that you can think of. The only ones that's really leaving out are some of the PlayStation 2 3D platformer games.
I was just about to ask if it had those.
No, unless they're hidden somewhere inside it. But what it does have is, all the classic Pac-Man games, the ones you would think of like Pac-Man and Pac-Mania, Pac-Land and Super Pac-Man and all those. But then it also has some of the more modern, the Championship Edition. It has Pac-Man Battle Royale, which is the arcade 4-player competitive game, which to this point has not had a good home release. So, and then the thing that's kind of interesting about this is it takes all of those games and it kind of throws them into an Animal Crossing style world. So you're building your own personal Pac-Man arcade, and as you achieve things within the games, you get there are achievements in the game, but then there are also game achievements on top of that. And as you achieve those, you get extra items to decorate your arcade. And so you can put the different arcade cabinets in there, but then you can also get posters or flags with Pac-Man and of different characters. And the different Pac-Man characters come into your arcade and will just be walking around playing the different games. So the Ghost, Blinky, and Pinky and all of them are coming in and playing your games. There have been some complaints about the quality of the emulation. I haven't noticed any problems with it. I'm playing it on the Xbox currently, so the ones I've heard about are the Steam version. So maybe I'm just not noticing the problems, or maybe those are exclusive to the Steam version. The one thing that is kind of weird about it is, so there are problems with who actually owns the properties behind Miss Pac-Man, because Miss Pac-Man was not developed in Japan. It was developed in the U.S. And so they have renamed Miss Pac-Man in this game. I think she's...
To what?
I think she's Mom Pac-Man or something. And they've also renamed...
Isn't she his girlfriend, though?
Well, she is the mom of Pac-Man Jr. and...
I guess.
But they've also renamed the kids and the dog in this. So that's really weird revisionist history for the Pac-Man franchise that's been around for 40 years at this point. And I don't know how I quite feel about that. But it's a pretty good collection, particularly if you don't already have, good copies of these games somewhere in your game collection and you want them. Particularly Pac-Man Championship Edition is a fantastic game. That's still an amazing game. Obviously, the original Pac-Man still a great game. I would like to play some of this Pac-Man Battle Royale with people. I've only ever played it in an arcade. It also kind of illuminates how bad some of those other Pac-Man games are when you go back and you start playing them and you're Pac-Land is a side-scrolling Mario-style game. It's not very good. So that definitely is showing up pretty well in this. But overall, it's a decent collection. If you get it on sale, I think it's entirely worth it. All right. We're running out of time, so let's go to our big question. What game do you want to see? We almost jumped the gun on this earlier. What game do you want to see announced during this E3 time? So these next 2 or 3 weeks, month of June, when all these different game companies are doing these press conferences and showcases and state of plays and whatever else they decide to call them, what game do you really want to see announced? So not games that we already know are coming out, but is there a game, a sequel to a game, a remaster, a reboot of a franchise that you would really want to see announced during this? And OJ, we'll start with you.
So I actually kind of hinted at it earlier. I would love to see a new Infamous game.
Me too.
And I think it would, a lot of the fans of the Infamous games are really into it, and we'd really want to see another game. I would also like to see, Well, I want dates for the Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2, and I want dates for Final Fantasy 16. But I would also like to see a new Castlevania game. I think that would be nice too. And I would want one in a Metroidvania style, not the remake style.
So in the 2D traditional, like the DS or Symphony of the Night style. All right. Alicia.
I had very similar answers. I'm expecting that they'll talk about Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. I want that. I want the dates for that. I want the dates for 16. I didn't think of Castlevania, but yes, please give us more Castlevania games in the original verse, not the remake verse, please. Please, please, please. I think I would
you
also...
don't want more Patrick Stewart voice acting?
They can keep him.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, we talked about it earlier, Sly Cooper 5 would be a dream come true. Like I said, I will cry if that gets announced.
We might need to live stream the PlayStation announcement just in case.
I'll just like record a video and just send it to our Facebook group. Just like, they announced Sly 5.
I'm pretty sure I can edit that audio in.
Yeah, I think if we're going on like something that would be just really cool, that there's no reason to think that they would announce this, but I also think it would be kind of fun to have like Secret of Evermore. That game is made, it's very similar in style to like the original Secret of Mana game, but it's basically, it's a boy who enjoys bad movies and his dog, and they get sucked into another world, and each portion of this new world, like one is like prehistoric times, one is like Greek mythology times, one is like medieval castle kind of thing, and one is futuristic. And so you're going between all these, trying to figure out how to get back home. And I have no reason to expect that this would be announced during E3 whatsoever. But I've been rewatching one of my favorite LPers play it. I'm like, this would be kind of fun.
I forgot about that game until you just said that, but I loved it.
Yeah. And that one also ends on a cliffhanger. So you can make a sequel. They probably won't, but...
That game was an attempt by Square's American arm to make games.
Yeah.
And so it was developed in the US, unlike all of Square's other games. But I agree with you. I actually really like that game quite a bit, and it gets a lot of grief among people online, or traditionally has, because it was an American developed game, and I don't think to some people it lives up to Secret of Mana, but it's a really fun game, and I enjoy it quite a bit. And so doing anything with that, like a remake or a sequel, that would be pretty exciting coming from them. I don't know that they will, because I feel like...
I don't expect them to at all.
I feel like Square treats that game in the same way that Nintendo treats Super Mario Brothers 2, the American version, where they kind of are like, well, we'll take some elements from this and put it in future games, but for the most part, we ignore that game like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or Final Fantasy Mystic Quest.
Right.
Which was the same exact thing, an American attempt at one.
Yeah. And, and I feel like Mystic Quest was an attempt to make an easier Final Fantasy game so that people could like on board with it.
Right.
And that has not held up well from Square's perspective, I guess, at least.
I really did love the game, though. I would like to see. That's another thing I would like to see a remake on.
But better than the Secret of Mana remake, please.
Yeah.
Well, my answer is another sort of long forgotten property. It's F-Zero from Nintendo. And when I got my Super Nintendo, I got it with a copy of F-Zero, and I love that game. My siblings and I used to go back and forth trying to beat each other's fastest times. And so we each raced as a different racer, so you would know, like you couldn't put in names, but you would know just by which car got the fastest time. And, and they did like the Nintendo 64 and GameCube updates of that game. And they've always been, I think, really fantastic games. And then for Mario Kart 8, they did the courses for, I forgot what they did for that. They did Blue Ocean and Mute City, maybe were the courses that they did. and they look amazing.
Yeah.
I think they're like two of the most amazing looking Mario Kart 8 courses in the game.
They really are.
I would so love Nintendo to do a new F-Zero. And it's one of those franchises. Nintendo, much better than Square, is one of those companies that does go back and like gets an old franchise and just shows up and goes, surprise, everyone, we're doing a new one of these. And so like I would just love to see them do that. It's a long dead franchise is what it feels like. But they've shown that those long dead franchises can be brought back and new life invigorated in them. But I'll agree with pretty much all of the answers that you all gave. You know, obviously I already said Secret of Evermore. I always love any new Castlevania, except, you know, the remakes or the reboots, whatever it was. Even the first one of that was decent enough as a God of War clone, but
it wasn't Castlevania.
No, it really wasn't. And so I'd love to see them do something new with that. And, you know, Konami is apparently doing something new with Silent Hill. So there's always the possibility that they'll do something. All right, we're going to end it there. Thank you for everyone tuning in and listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send those to me at justin.young@siu.edu. You can also go to salukigames.com to listen to any of our past episodes. We also have a lot of cool content on there. So we have some of the projects that my students did from this last semester in class where they were doing history of game franchises. So, for example, OJ has a video up there about the history of Final Fantasy you can check out. We also have one on the history of Call of Duty and the history of Zelda. And we're going to have some other videos up in the next few weeks and everything. So go there, check all that out. We are going to be back soonish, hopefully, with a new episode. I don't know exactly when because of scheduling and everything. So
hopefully Ryan will be back then too.
Yes, hopefully Ryan will be back. We actually had a fourth guest who had to back out at the last second, so that's why it's just the three of us. But, you know, we'll try to have 4 people in this room next time and that we all get together and record.
Well, we totally forgot. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm okay. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome.
Alicia, do you also need to ask?
I was thinking about it. How are you, Justin? How you holding up?
I'm holding up okay. That makes it sound much more tragic. Something really bad has happened to me
obviously,
recently.
Ryan is missing.
That's true.
There is a presence missing from your life.
That's true. I am quite distraught over the missing of Ryan.
If you want to complain about Ryan not being here, you can email justin.young@siu.edu.
If you have anime questions, I will pass those along to Ryan. He can probably answer those certainly better than I can. But yeah, thank you, OJ, Alicia. Thank you, Ryan, for being here in spirit with us.
Waluigi.
That's what he wants to see announced during E3 is a Waluigi game.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we all know Ryan's answer. A Waluigi visual novel. He'd lose his mind over it. But thanks for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back soon. Have a good week.